In March 2026, America's Defense Department declared a U.S. AI company a national security supply chain risk. Not a foreign enemy, a domestic tech firm. This was not just a contract dispute. It showed that once a technology looks like strategic power to the state, the language of markets changes. A product becomes infrastructure, and infrastructure becomes a question of power. The company was Anthropic, the creator of Claude. On March 4, it announced that the Defense Department had formally declared the firm a supply chain risk. The legal scope was relatively narrow, mainly about Claude's use in Defense Department contracts. But the political signal was enormous. A disagreement with a software company had been lifted straight into the language of national security. AI was no longer just business. The state now saw it as part of military capability. At the center of the conflict were two boundaries. Anthropic said its model should not be used for massive domestic surveillance of U.S. citizens, and fully autonomous weapons should not take lethal action without a human decision. The company said it was ready to cooperate on other legitimate national security uses. But the negotiation broke down. That is the main conflict. Who sets the limits on powerful technology, the creator or the elected state? At the same time, OpenAI struck a separate deal with the Pentagon for AI use in classified environments. Its published terms said, no mass domestic surveillance, no independently deployed autonomous weapons, and no bypassing humans on high-risk decisions. So the story is not a simple one brave, one sold out. Two companies chose different technical and legal frameworks for the same risks. But the state's message was clear. Frontier AI now sits at the center of defense. Every era has a defining technology. Once it was railroads, then oil, steel, telecommunications, now artificial intelligence. At first, these are private innovations. Later, the whole economy depends on them. Then comes the state's interest, control, breakup, emergency takeover, or strict regulation. The events are not identical, but the pattern is familiar. Technology creates power, power becomes infrastructure, and infrastructure enters national security. In the late 19th century, Standard Oil built massive influence over America's oil refining and transport. Pipelines, rail transport, distribution, and pricing. Rockefeller's empire touched them all. In 1911, the U.S. Supreme Court applied antitrust law and ordered the company broken into 34 entities. Government did not run the oil industry, but it broke concentrated private power. The lesson was clear. When market power controls the doors of infrastructure, the state eventually intervenes. Imagine one company, one network, and influence over most of a nation's fuel flow. That number is not just market share. It is a measure of dependency. When competitors cannot move without your pipeline, when rail rates bend in your favor, business is no longer ordinary business. The Standard Oil case was therefore not only Rockefeller's trial. It was a question: how much essential power is safe in a single private hand? The state does not always seize companies. Sometimes it breaks monopolies. Sometimes it regulates price and access. Sometimes it uses emergency powers, and sometimes it grants subsidies and land to build faster. In current U.S. AI policy, what appears more often than direct nationalization is faster data center construction, easier permitting, and pushing tech companies to carry the cost of their own power and grid upgrades. The power struggle is therefore not only about ownership, it is also about who writes the terms. America's most extensive federal control of railroads came in World War I, from 1917 to 1920. In World War II, the state did not run the whole industry for years. But in a 1943 labor dispute, the Roosevelt administration briefly took over the railroads, so wartime transport would not stop. That distinction matters. History shows that In emergencies, the state can temporarily place a private network under its command, especially when soldiers, food, and weapons depend on that network. During the Korean War, fearing a steelworkers' strike, President Harry Truman ordered a takeover of the nation's steel mills. The logic: if steel production stopped, the war effort would be endangered. But in the Youngstown case, the Supreme Court said the president could not seize private industry that way without congressional approval. Government stepped back. The episode shows both the reach of state power and its constitutional limit. Emergency power opens doors, but not every door. Standard Oil was broken under antitrust law. Railroads saw wartime control. The steel seizure attempt was stopped by the courts. Telecommunications brought long-term regulation. Calling all of this nationalization would be wrong. But every episode carries the same tension: private ownership versus public interest, innovation versus security, market speed versus state authority. AI is making that old tension faster and deeper. We think of AI as software inside a screen. In reality, it is a combination of vast data centers, advanced chips, fiber networks, cooling systems, and continuous power. Hundreds of billions of dollars in new investment are being announced. Governments also acknowledge that holding AI leadership requires new generation capacity and transmission infrastructure. So AI is no longer just code. It is concrete: copper, water, land, and electricity. And wherever those resources are scarce, policy and power collide. Data center demand is rising so fast that ordinary consumers' power bills, grid reliability, and new power plants have all become political questions. In 2026, the White House told major hyperscalers and AI companies that for new data centers they would have to build, bring, or buy their own electricity and carry the full cost of grid upgrades. That is not nationalization, but it is a hard state condition. You may grow, but you will not dump that growth's burden onto ordinary people. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and other tech companies are signing deals with nuclear, hydro, gas, and renewable projects to lock in long-term power. Even a plan to restart a 3-mile island reactor is tied to data center demand. It is a strange turn. Companies we used to call software firms are now shaping the future of energy infrastructure. When running code requires a power plant, technology policy and energy policy are no longer separate. If compute concentrates in a few clouds, decision-making concentrates with them. Governments fear dependency. Companies fear nationalization. Citizens fear both. The tracks are converging. Whoever controls the scarce compute stack may shape what intelligence is allowed to do and for whom. In Pentagon language, AI is now more than a procurement tool. It is a potential part of intelligence analysis, cyber defense, logistics, and battlefield planning. In the Anthropic conflict, words like warfighter, supply chain, and national security appeared again and again. That language matters because with weapons and military infrastructure, the state is not an ordinary buyer. It writes rules, grants clearances, limits use, and if needed replaces the supplier. AI has entered that special world. Anthropic did not refuse all military use. Its objections focused on two specific fields: massive domestic surveillance and fully autonomous lethal action that bypasses humans. The company said current frontier models are not reliable enough to be given life's final decision alone. The Defense Department replied that a supplier's ideological preference should not block warfighters' capability. The same event looked like a safety boundary to one side and an operational risk to the other. More than any verified plan to seize AI infrastructure outright, current policy shows another strategy: using federal land, speeding permits, encouraging domestic chip and power projects, and structuring the supply chain with national security standards. This is not an ownership takeover. It is ecosystem steering. The state is saying where data centers will go, which components are safe, who gets federal contracts, and which limits, if crossed, cost you access. Modern control often works without ownership. The U.S. has used export controls to limit China's access to advanced AI chips and manufacturing equipment. The target: slow military and strategic capability. But control is never perfect. Companies seek new supply routes. Domestic alternatives appear. Black markets form, and allies calculate their own interests. So treating the chip war as a simple win-lose is wrong. It is a strategy to buy time. And in that time, both sides try to become more self-reliant. Google's TPU, Amazon's Trainium, Microsoft's accelerator plans, OpenAI's custom chip initiative. Everyone wants less NVIDIA dependency. At the same time, the state wants advanced chips made at home and kept beyond competitors' reach. So AI competition has moved beyond model benchmarks. It is now a contest of foundries, memory, packaging, power, and geopolitics. The country that holds the silicon supply chain will not only sell technology, it will define the limits of others' potential. You can occupy a steel mill. You can put soldiers on a railroad. You can cut power to a data center. But knowledge is harder to capture the same way. Model weights get copied. Researchers change countries. Algorithms return under new names. Still, without compute, chips, and power, large AI cannot run. That is the paradox. Intelligence is partly flowing knowledge and partly heavy infrastructure. The state cannot capture every thought in the code, but it can control the doors that code must pass through to run. Companies say, "We built it, we know the limits." The state says, "National security decisions belong to elected institutions." Open source communities say, "This much power should not sit with any one party." All three have arguments. All three have interests. History teaches that capturing power is easier than holding it. Like oil, steel, or rail, AI cannot be locked completely. But through rules of access, price, and deployment, its trajectory can be changed. When Standard Oil was broken in 1911, oil did not end. When the 1952 steel seizure was stopped in court, the state's emergency power did not disappear. The 2026 AI conflict will not stop the technology either. It will decide who benefits, who writes the terms, and who carries responsibility for error. The answer is being written in Pentagon meeting rooms, corporate boardrooms, courtrooms, and data centers that hum all night. This is not only America's story. Every country that wants AI will face the same question. I am the invisible economist. We dig for the history hiding behind today's economic headlines. If this was valuable, subscribe to the channel. Next time you hear talk of AI safety, regulation, or national security, ask one question. Does this rule truly keep people safe? Or does it hand a new party the keys to control? Because the most valuable resource of the future may not be oil or steel. It may be the power to decide.